Silence is power. Why saying less makes you more influential. By T.M. Light. Description: This powerful book is a transformative guide to mastering communication, confidence, and personal influence through intentional silence. It explores how speaking less can help you gain respect, improve relationships, and develop emotional control. Learn how to use silence strategically in conversations, build a strong presence, and communicate with clarity and purpose. Perfect for readers seeking self-improvement, leadership skills, and personal growth, this book reveals how quiet confidence can create lasting impact. Discover how to stop over-talking, listen deeply, and become more influential by saying less. Chapter Outline. Introduction: The Power We Overlook. Chapter 1: Why We Feel the Need to Talk So Much. Chapter 2: The Psychology of Silence. Chapter 3: Silence as a Form of Power. Chapter 4: Listening More, Understanding Better. Chapter 5: Emotional Control Through Silence. Chapter 6: The Influence of Mystery and Presence. Chapter 7: Using Silence in Conversations and Conflict. Chapter 8: Overcoming the Fear of Being Quiet. Chapter 9: Silence in Personal Growth and Self-Awareness. Chapter 10: Mastering the Balance Between Silence and Speech. Conclusion: The Strength in Saying Less. Introduction: The Power We Overlook. We live in a world filled with noise. Conversations never seem to stop, opinions are shared instantly, and the pressure to respond, explain, and express yourself is constant. From social interactions to digital spaces, there is an unspoken expectation to always have something to say. Silence in many ways has become uncomfortable. Something to fill, something to avoid, something that feels like absence rather than presence. In this environment, talking is often equated with confidence. The loudest voice in the room is assumed to be the most certain. The quickest response is seen as intelligence. The ability to speak at length is mistaken for authority. And because of this, many people feel the need to contribute constantly, to prove themselves through words, to ensure they are seen, heard, and acknowledged. But in this constant exchange of noise, something powerful is being overlooked. Silence. Silence is often misunderstood. It is seen as hesitation, as insecurity, as a lack of knowledge or confidence. When someone is quiet, assumptions are quickly made. They must not know enough. They must not have anything valuable to say. They must be unsure of themselves. These assumptions have shaped how many people approach communication. They have created a belief that in order to be influential, you must always speak. But what if the opposite were true? What if influence is not built on how much you say, but on how intentional you are with your words? What if power is not found in constant expression, but in the ability to hold back, to observe, and to choose your moments carefully? There is a hidden strength in silence that many fail to recognize. It is not passive. It is not empty. It is active, controlled, and deliberate. Silence creates space, space to think, to understand, and to respond with clarity rather than impulse. It allows you to step back from the noise and see what others may miss. When you are silent, you are not disengaged. You are observing. You are listening. You are processing. You are gathering information that is often overlooked by those who are too focused on speaking. This awareness gives you an advantage. It allows you to respond with precision, rather than reacting out of habit. Restraint is often mistaken for weakness, but it is one of the strongest forms of control you can develop. It takes discipline to pause when you feel the urge to speak. It takes confidence to remain quiet when others are trying to fill the space. It takes awareness to know that not every moment requires your voice. This is where true influence begins. People who understand the power of silence do not rush to speak. They do not feel the need to prove themselves through constant words. Instead, they choose when to speak, and when they do, their words carry weight. They are listened to not because they speak often, but because they speak with intention. Think about the individuals who command attention without raising their voices. The ones who do not need to dominate conversations to be respected. The ones whose presence alone shifts the energy in a room. Their influence does not come from how much they say, but from how they carry themselves, how they observe, and how they choose their moments. Silence in this sense becomes a tool. It allows you to maintain control over your responses. It prevents you from speaking out of emotion, from saying things you may later regret, from filling space with words that do not add value. It gives you the ability to respond thoughtfully, rather than react impulsively. Powerful people understand this. They use silence strategically. In conversations, they listen more than they speak, allowing others to reveal information, to express themselves, and sometimes to say more than they intended. In moments of tension, they pause, creating space that shifts the dynamic. In decision-making, they take time to reflect, rather than rushing to conclusions. This does not mean they avoid speaking. It means they speak with purpose. There is a difference between talking to be heard and speaking to be impactful. The former is driven by the need for validation, for presence, for acknowledgement. The latter is driven by clarity, by intention, by understanding. Silence is what creates the gap between these two. When you become comfortable with silence, you begin to develop a different kind of confidence. It is not the confidence that seeks attention, but the confidence that does not depend on it. You no longer feel the need to fill every pause, to respond to every comment, or to assert yourself in every moment. You trust that your presence is enough, and that your words, when used, will have impact. This shift changes how others perceive you. When you speak less, people listen more. When you pause, people pay attention. When you choose your words carefully, they carry more meaning. Your communication becomes more effective, not because you are saying more, but because you are saying what matters. Throughout this book, you will begin to understand how silence can transform the way you interact with others and with yourself. You will learn how to develop the discipline to pause, the awareness to observe, and the confidence to speak only when it truly adds value. You will discover that silence is not about withdrawing from conversations, but about engaging in them more effectively. It is about listening deeply, responding thoughtfully, and creating space for understanding. It is about recognizing that influence is not built through constant noise, but through presence, intention, and control. You will also begin to see how silence impacts your inner world. In a world filled with constant input, silence allows you to reconnect with yourself. It gives you the space to think clearly, to reflect, and to understand your own thoughts without distraction. This clarity strengthens your decision-making, your confidence, and your sense of direction. Most importantly, you will learn that silence is not something to fear. It is something to master. It is a skill, one that requires practice and awareness. It challenges the habits you may have developed, the need to respond quickly, to fill gaps, to prove yourself through words. But as you begin to embrace it, you will see how it changes your interactions, your mindset, and your presence. The world may reward noise, but influence is built in quiet moments. It is shaped in the pauses, in the observations, in the decisions to speak or not to speak. This is the power we overlook. And once you begin to understand it, you will never see silence the same way again. Chapter 1: Why we feel the need to talk so much. If you pause and observe your daily interactions, you may begin to notice something subtle yet powerful. Silence rarely lasts long. In conversations, in meetings, in social settings, there is almost always someone ready to fill the gap. Words rush in quickly, often without much thought, as if the absence of sound itself is something that must be corrected immediately. This instinct to speak, to respond, to fill every quiet moment is deeply ingrained. It does not happen by accident. It is shaped by fear, by habit, and by the way we have been conditioned to communicate. To understand the power of silence, you must first understand why it feels so difficult to embrace. At the core of this need to talk is a fear of silence itself. Silence can feel uncomfortable. It creates a pause, a moment where nothing is being said, and in that pause many people begin to feel exposed. Without words to guide the interaction, there is a sense of uncertainty. What should be said next? What does the other person think? Does this silence mean something is wrong? For many, silence feels like a void that needs to be filled. It can create tension, not because silence is inherently negative, but because it removes the structure that conversation provides. Words give direction. They create movement. Silence, on the other hand, asks you to sit still, to be present, and to tolerate a moment without immediate control. This discomfort with stillness is not limited to conversations. It reflects a broader pattern in how people engage with their own thoughts. Many individuals are not used to sitting quietly with themselves. When there is no distraction, no conversation, no external input, the mind becomes louder. Thoughts surface, emotions become more noticeable, and without the buffer of constant activity, you are left alone with your inner world. For some, this can feel overwhelming. Talking becomes a way to avoid that stillness. It becomes a distraction, a way to keep moving, to avoid pausing long enough to feel what is beneath the surface. In this sense, over-communication is not just about interacting with others. It is also about avoiding deeper self-awareness. Another powerful driver behind the need to talk is the desire for validation. Words become a tool for seeking approval, for being acknowledged, for confirming your place in a social environment. When you speak, you are not only expressing yourself, you are also signaling your presence. You are saying, "I am here. I matter. I have something to contribute." This desire is natural. Human beings are wired for connection, and communication plays a central role in that connection. But when the need for validation becomes dominant, it can lead to over-communication. You may find yourself speaking not because you have something meaningful to say, but because you want to be seen, heard, or accepted. In these moments, words lose their intentionality. They become a means of filling space, rather than adding value. You may speak quickly, without fully thinking, simply to maintain your presence in the conversation. You may feel uncomfortable when you are not contributing, as though silence equates to invisibility. This pattern is reinforced by social conditioning. From an early age, many people are taught that participation means speaking. In classrooms, workplaces, and social settings, those who speak more are often perceived as more engaged, more confident, and more capable. Silence, in contrast, is sometimes interpreted as disinterest or lack of understanding. Over time, this creates a habit. You learn to associate talking with competence and silence with uncertainty. You begin to feel that in order to be respected or valued, you must always have something to say. This belief can be so deeply embedded that silence starts to feel like a risk. Social environments further amplify this conditioning. In group settings, there is often an unspoken competition for attention. Conversations move quickly, and those who speak more frequently are more likely to be noticed. This creates pressure to respond quickly, to contribute often, and to keep the conversation moving. In this context, silence can feel like falling behind. It can feel like missing an opportunity to assert yourself, to share your perspective, or to be recognized. As a result, many people develop a habit of speaking before they have fully processed their thoughts, simply to keep up with the pace of interaction. Talking also becomes a way to control perception. When you speak, you have the ability to shape how others see you. You can present your ideas, explain your actions, and influence how you are understood. This can create a sense of control, especially in situations where you feel uncertain. By talking more, you may feel that you are managing how others perceive you. You can clarify your intentions, justify your decisions, and ensure that your voice is heard. In contrast, silence can feel like a loss of that control. When you are quiet, you leave space for others to interpret your actions without guidance. This can be uncomfortable, especially if you are concerned about how you are perceived. You may feel the need to explain yourself, to fill in the gaps, to ensure that there is no misunderstanding. But in doing so, you may also dilute the impact of your words. When everything is explained, there is less room for curiosity, for interpretation, and for others to engage more deeply with what you say. Understanding the root of overcommunication requires you to look beyond the surface. It is not simply about talking too much. It is about the underlying reasons that drive that behavior. Fear of silence, desire for validation, social conditioning, and the need for control all play a role. When you become aware of these factors, you begin to see your communication patterns more clearly. You may notice moments when you speak out of habit rather than intention. You may recognize situations where silence feels uncomfortable, not because it is harmful, but because it is unfamiliar. This awareness is the first step toward change. It allows you to pause and ask yourself why you are speaking. Are you adding value to the conversation, or are you filling space? Are you responding with intention, or reacting out of habit? Are you seeking validation, or expressing something meaningful? These questions do not require immediate answers. They simply invite you to become more conscious of your communication. Over time, this consciousness creates space for a different approach. You begin to see that you do not need to speak in every moment. That silence is not something to fear, but something to explore. That your presence is not defined by how much you say, but by the clarity and intention behind your words. As you move forward, you will start to experience silence differently. What once felt uncomfortable may begin to feel empowering. What once felt like a gap may begin to feel like an opportunity. You will discover that by saying less, you create more impact. But this shift begins here with understanding. Understanding why you feel the need to talk so much, and recognizing that this need is not a fixed part of who you are, but a pattern that can be changed. And as you begin to change that pattern, you open the door to a new way of communicating, one that is not driven by fear or habit, but guided by awareness, intention, and quiet strength. Chapter 2: The Psychology of Silence. Silence is often mistaken for absence, but in reality it is presence in its most concentrated form. It is not empty. It is full of meaning, intention, and psychological impact. When used with awareness, silence has the power to influence how people perceive you, how they respond to you, and how deeply they engage with what you say. To understand the true power of silence, you must first understand how it affects human perception. People are constantly interpreting what they see and hear, not just through words but through behavior, timing, and energy. Communication is not limited to what is spoken. In many ways, what is not said carries just as much weight, if not more. When someone speaks continuously, their words can begin to lose impact. The more they say, the more their message becomes diluted. Listeners may begin to tune out, not because the words are unimportant, but because there is too much of them. The mind can only process so much before it begins to filter and prioritize. Silence interrupts this pattern. It creates a pause, a moment where attention sharpens. When someone who speaks less finally chooses to speak, people are more likely to listen. Not because the words are inherently more valuable, but because they are rare. And rarity creates significance. This is why people often listen more to those who speak less. When your words are not constant, they carry more weight. They are perceived as more deliberate, more thoughtful, and more intentional. You are not speaking out of habit, but out of purpose. This distinction changes how others receive your message. There is also an element of curiosity that silence creates. When someone does not reveal everything, when they do not fill every space with words, it invites others to pay closer attention. People begin to wonder what you are thinking, what you might say next, or why you have chosen not to speak. This curiosity draws them in, making your presence more engaging without requiring constant effort. Silence, in this sense, becomes a form of influence. It shifts the dynamic of interaction. Instead of trying to capture attention through volume or frequency, you hold attention through restraint. You create a space where your words are anticipated rather than expected. This leads to another powerful aspect of silence: its association with confidence and authority. In many social situations, there is an underlying belief that those who speak the most are the most confident. But true confidence does not rely on constant expression. It is not driven by the need to prove, explain, or justify. Confidence is comfortable with silence. When you are confident, you do not feel the need to fill every pause. You do not feel pressured to respond immediately, or to contribute to every conversation. You are secure in your presence, knowing that you do not need to constantly assert yourself to be valued. This quiet confidence is often perceived as authority. People associate calm, measured behavior with control and composure. When you speak less, you appear more deliberate. When you pause before responding, you appear more thoughtful. These qualities create an impression of depth and stability. Authority is not about dominance. It is about presence. It is about how you carry yourself, how you engage, and how you communicate. Silence enhances this presence by removing unnecessary noise. It allows your actions, your expressions, and your words to stand out more clearly. There is also a psychological effect that silence has on conversations. When you allow space, others tend to fill it. People are naturally inclined to avoid silence, and in doing so, they often reveal more than they initially intended. They may elaborate, clarify, or share additional information simply because the space exists. This gives you an advantage. By speaking less, you create opportunities to observe, to listen, and to understand more deeply. You gain insight into others' thoughts, intentions, and emotions, without needing to ask direct questions. This level of understanding enhances your ability to respond effectively. Silence also creates mental space for you. When you are not constantly speaking, you have more time to think. You can process information more thoroughly, consider different perspectives, and choose your words with greater care. This leads to more intentional communication, where each word is selected for its impact rather than its immediacy. In contrast, constant talking often leads to reactive communication. You speak as thoughts arise, without fully considering their meaning or their effect. This can result in misunderstandings, misinterpretations, or statements that do not fully reflect your intentions. By embracing silence, you shift from reaction to response. You give yourself the time to align your words with your thoughts, creating communication that is clearer, more precise, and more effective. Another important aspect of silence is the emotional weight of unspoken words. Not everything needs to be said to be understood. In fact, some of the most powerful moments in communication occur in silence. Think about a pause after a meaningful statement, or a moment of silence in a conversation that carries emotion. These moments often feel more intense than words themselves. They allow the message to settle, to resonate, and to be fully absorbed. Silence can convey confidence, uncertainty, empathy, or reflection, depending on how it is used. It adds depth to communication, allowing meaning to extend beyond the spoken word. When you speak and then pause, you give your words space to breathe. You allow others to process what you have said, rather than overwhelming them with more information. This is particularly important in emotionally charged situations. When emotions are high, words can easily become reactive. Silence in these moments creates a buffer. It allows you to step back, to regulate your response and to choose your words carefully. It also allows others to feel heard. When you are silent and attentive, you create a sense of space for the other person to express themselves. This can build trust, as they feel that their words are being received without interruption or judgment. Silence, therefore, is not just about what you do not say. It is about what you create through that absence. It is about the space, the attention, and the intention that it brings to your interactions. As you begin to understand the psychology of silence, you will start to see it differently. It is not a gap to be filled, but a tool to be used. It is not a sign of weakness, but an expression of strength. It is not something to avoid, but something to master. You will begin to notice how others respond when you speak less. How conversations shift when you pause. How your words carry more weight when they are not constant. These changes may be subtle at first, but over time they become more pronounced. Silence will begin to feel less like discomfort and more like control. Less like absence and more like presence. You will realize that influence is not about how much you say, but about how effectively you communicate. And in that realization, you will begin to develop a new kind of power. One that does not rely on volume, but on intention. One that is not driven by noise, but by clarity. This is the psychology of silence. And once you understand it, you will never underestimate its impact again. Chapter 3: Silence as a Form of Power. Power is often misunderstood. Many people associate it with dominance, volume, or the ability to command attention through constant expression. They believe that to be powerful, you must be the one speaking the most, asserting the most, and making your presence known in every moment. But true power does not operate this way. It is not loud, forced, or desperate to be seen. It is controlled, deliberate, and deeply rooted in awareness. Silence, when understood and used correctly, is one of the most powerful tools you can possess. Restraint is where this power begins. The ability to hold back, to pause, to choose not to speak immediately is not a limitation, it is a form of influence. When you do not feel the need to respond to everything, when you allow space instead of filling it, you create a different kind of presence. You become someone who is not driven by impulse, but guided by intention. Restraint creates anticipation. When you do not speak constantly, people begin to pay closer attention when you do. Your words are no longer part of the background noise. They stand out. They carry weight. This is influence, not through force but through selectivity. Influence is not about how often you speak. It is about how deeply your words are felt when you do. When you practice restraint, you ensure that your communication is purposeful. You are not speaking to fill space, you are speaking to create impact. This is where the difference between noise and presence becomes clear. Noise is constant, scattered, and often reactive. It fills the environment, but does not always add value. It can be overwhelming, making it difficult for people to focus or engage meaningfully. In conversations, noise often appears as over-explaining, interrupting, or speaking without fully considering the message. Presence, on the other hand, is grounded and intentional. It does not require constant words to be felt. It is expressed through awareness, through attention, and through the ability to engage without urgency. Presence allows you to be fully involved in a moment without needing to dominate it. Silence enhances presence. It removes the distractions of unnecessary words and allows your attention to be fully directed. When you are present, people can feel it. They can sense your focus, your awareness, and your calmness. This creates a different kind of connection, one that is not based on how much you say, but on how you engage. When you operate from presence rather than noise, your influence increases. People are more likely to trust, respect, and listen to someone who is composed and intentional. You become someone whose words are valued, not because they are frequent, but because they are meaningful. Silence also gives you control over your reactions. In many situations, the instinct to respond immediately can lead to unnecessary conflict, miscommunication, or regret. Emotions can rise quickly, and when they do, words often follow without reflection. By embracing silence, you create a pause between stimulus and response. This pause is where control exists. It gives you the opportunity to process what is happening, to understand your emotions, and to choose your response rather than react impulsively. This control is a form of power. It allows you to remain composed in situations where others may become reactive. It prevents you from saying things you do not mean, from escalating conflicts unnecessarily, and from losing control of your communication. In moments of tension, silence can shift the entire dynamic. Instead of contributing to the intensity, you introduce calm. Instead of reacting, you observe. This can disarm the situation, creating space for a more thoughtful and constructive interaction. Power dynamics in conversations are often influenced by who controls the pace and direction of the interaction. Many people try to establish control by speaking more, by asserting their opinions quickly, or by dominating the conversation. But this approach can sometimes have the opposite effect. It can create resistance, reduce listening, and diminish the impact of what is being said. Silence offers a different approach to influence within these dynamics. When you speak less, you allow others to express themselves more fully. This gives you insight into their thoughts, their intentions, and their perspectives. It allows you to understand the conversation on a deeper level, rather than just reacting to it. At the same time, your silence can create a sense of balance. It slows down the interaction, giving both parties time to think and respond more thoughtfully. This can lead to more meaningful communication, where ideas are explored rather than rushed. In certain situations, silence can also create subtle pressure. When you choose not to respond immediately, it can prompt others to reflect, to elaborate, or to reconsider their words. This is not about manipulation, but about allowing space for the conversation to develop more naturally. By not filling every gap, you encourage others to engage more deeply. You create an environment where communication is not forced, but allowed to unfold. This approach often leads to more honest and authentic interactions. Silence speaks louder than words in many situations, because it draws attention to what is not being said. When there is a pause, people become more aware. They listen more closely, observe more carefully, and engage more fully with the moment. Words can sometimes be overlooked, especially when they are constant. But silence stands out. It creates contrast, making the moments around it more noticeable. When you speak after a pause, your words carry more emphasis. They are received with greater attention, because they are not competing with continuous noise. There is also a sense of confidence that silence conveys. When you are comfortable with silence, you demonstrate that you do not need to rely on constant expression to maintain your presence. You show that you are secure in yourself, that you trust your ability to communicate effectively without overcompensating. This confidence is often perceived as strength. People are drawn to those who are composed, who are not easily shaken, and who communicate with clarity and intention. Silence becomes a reflection of that inner stability. As you begin to embrace silence as a form of power, you will notice changes in how you interact with others. Conversations will feel more intentional, more balanced, and more meaningful. You will feel less pressure to respond immediately, and more confidence in your ability to choose your words carefully. You will also notice changes within yourself. You will become more aware of your thoughts, more in control of your reactions, and more connected to your presence. Silence will no longer feel like something to avoid, but something to use. This does not mean that you stop speaking or withdraw from conversations. It means that you speak with purpose. It means that you understand the value of your words and the impact of your silence. It means that you engage in a way that is thoughtful, deliberate, and aligned with your intentions. Power is not about how much you say. It is about how effectively you communicate. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is to say nothing at all. Chapter 4: Listening More, Understanding Better. In a world where everyone is eager to speak, very few truly listen. Conversations often become exchanges of words rather than moments of understanding. People wait for their turn to respond, instead of fully absorbing what is being said. They hear, but they do not listen. And in that gap between hearing and listening, meaning is lost. Listening is one of the most underestimated skills you can develop, yet it is one of the most powerful. It is not passive. It is not simply the absence of speaking. It is an active, intentional process that requires presence, attention, and awareness. When you truly listen, you are not just receiving words. You are understanding emotions, intentions, and perspectives that go far beyond what is being said. Deep listening begins with silence. When you remove the need to constantly speak, you create space to fully engage with others. You allow their words to land, to unfold, and to reveal their deeper meaning. You are no longer focused on what you will say next, but on what is being communicated in the moment. This shift changes everything. When people feel heard, they open up. They share more honestly, more deeply, and more authentically. They feel understood, and that sense of understanding creates connection. In relationships, whether personal or professional, this connection is invaluable. It builds trust, strengthens bonds, and creates a foundation where meaningful communication can thrive. Silence improves relationships because it removes the pressure to perform. It allows conversations to become less about proving a point and more about understanding one another. When you listen without interrupting, without rushing to respond, you show respect. You demonstrate that the other person's thoughts and feelings matter. This kind of listening is rare, and because it is rare, it is powerful. Many misunderstandings in relationships arise not from what is said, but from what is not truly heard. People may speak clearly, but if the listener is distracted, reactive, or focused on their own response, the message becomes distorted. Silence helps prevent this. It creates a space where communication can be received fully, without interference. But listening goes beyond words. Communication is not only verbal. It is expressed through tone, body language, facial expressions, and energy. When you are quiet and attentive, you begin to notice these subtleties. You see the pauses, the shifts in tone, the emotions behind the words. A person may say they are fine, but their tone may suggest otherwise. Their posture, their expression, their energy may reveal something deeper. When you are constantly speaking, you miss these signals. But when you are silent and observant, you begin to pick up on them. This awareness allows you to understand people on a deeper level. You are no longer relying solely on what is said, but on what is felt. You begin to see patterns, to recognize emotions, and to respond in a way that is more aligned with the true nature of the interaction. Observing beyond words requires patience. It requires you to slow down, to pay attention, and to resist the urge to jump in immediately. It asks you to be present, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. This level of presence creates a different kind of communication, one that is more intuitive, more connected, and more meaningful. When you say less, you gain more insight. This may seem counterintuitive at first, but it becomes clear when you experience it. By not dominating the conversation, you give others the space to express themselves fully. You allow them to reveal their thoughts, their concerns, and their perspectives without interruption. In doing so, you gather information that would otherwise remain hidden. You learn more about the person, about the situation, and about the dynamics at play. This insight gives you an advantage. It allows you to respond with greater clarity, to make better decisions, and to engage more effectively. Gaining insight is not about controlling the conversation. It is about understanding it. It is about being aware of what is happening, both on the surface and beneath it. Silence is what makes this awareness possible. As you develop this skill, you will begin to notice how much you have been missing when you were focused on speaking. You will see how conversations unfold differently when you listen more. You will feel the shift in connection, the depth of understanding, and the quality of interaction. This process also changes how you see yourself. You become more aware of your own thoughts, your own reactions, and your own communication patterns. You begin to notice when you feel the urge to interrupt, to respond quickly, or to fill silence. And in that awareness, you gain the ability to choose a different approach. Becoming more aware and perceptive is not something that happens overnight. It is a skill that develops with practice. It requires you to be intentional, to remind yourself to pause, to listen, and to observe. But over time, it becomes more natural. You begin to move through conversations with a different mindset. Instead of thinking about what you will say, you focus on what you are learning. Instead of trying to control the interaction, you allow it to unfold. Instead of reacting immediately, you take the time to understand. This shift not only improves your communication, but also enhances your presence. People notice when they are truly being listened to. They feel it. And in response, they are more likely to trust you, to respect you, and to engage with you on a deeper level. Listening more does not mean you become silent all the time. It means you become intentional with your silence. You choose when to speak and when to listen. You understand that your value in a conversation is not determined by how much you say, but by how well you understand. As you continue to develop this skill, you will find that your words when you do speak carry more weight. They are informed by what you have observed, by what you have understood, and by the clarity you have gained through listening. You will also find that your relationships become stronger. Conversations become more meaningful. Interactions become more authentic. And your ability to navigate different situations improves, because you are no longer operating on assumptions, but on insight. In a world that encourages constant expression, choosing to listen is a powerful act. It sets you apart. It allows you to connect, to understand, and to influence in ways that go beyond words. Listening is not just a skill. It is a form of respect, a source of insight, and a pathway to deeper understanding. And when you master it, you unlock a level of awareness that transforms not only how you communicate, but how you experience the world around you. Chapter 5: Emotional Control Through Silence. Emotions are powerful. They shape how you think, how you act, and how you respond to the world around you. In moments of calm, it is easy to feel in control, to believe that your responses are always measured and intentional. But when emotions intensify, when anger rises, when frustration builds, when conflict emerges, control can begin to slip. Words come faster, reactions become sharper, and before you realize it, you may have said or done something you did not fully mean. This is where silence becomes one of your greatest strengths. Silence is not just a communication tool, it is a form of emotional control. It creates a space between what you feel and how you respond. And within that space lies your power. One of the most common challenges people face is impulsive reactions. When something triggers you, whether it is a comment, a situation, or a perceived slight, your immediate response is often emotional. The mind reacts quickly, driven by instinct rather than reflection. You may feel the urge to defend yourself, to correct someone, or to express your frustration without hesitation. In these moments, words can become weapons. They can escalate situations, damage relationships, and create consequences that extend far beyond the moment itself. And often, once those words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. Avoiding impulsive reactions does not mean suppressing your emotions. It means creating enough space to understand them before acting on them. Silence is what provides that space. When you choose not to respond immediately, you interrupt the automatic cycle of reaction. You give yourself a moment to breathe, to process and to gain clarity. This pause may be brief, but it is powerful. It shifts you from reacting unconsciously to responding intentionally. The strength in pausing before responding is often underestimated. Many people associate quick responses with confidence or assertiveness. They believe that hesitation is a sign of uncertainty. But in reality, the ability to pause is a sign of control. When you pause, you are not avoiding the situation. You are engaging with it more thoughtfully. You are allowing your mind to catch up with your emotions, ensuring that your response aligns with your intentions rather than your impulses. This pause also changes the dynamic of the interaction. It slows down the pace, creating space for reflection not only for you but for others as well. It reduces the intensity of the moment, making it easier to navigate the situation with clarity. Managing emotions such as anger and frustration requires this level of awareness. These emotions are natural. They arise in response to situations that feel unfair, challenging, or overwhelming. But how you handle them determines their impact. When anger is expressed impulsively, it often leads to conflict. Words become sharp, tone becomes aggressive, and the situation escalates. What may have started as a manageable issue can quickly become something more complex. Silence allows you to manage these emotions differently. It gives you the opportunity to step back, to understand what you are feeling, and to decide how to express it in a way that is constructive rather than destructive. This does not mean that you ignore your emotions or avoid addressing the situation. It means that you approach it with intention. You choose when and how to respond, ensuring that your words reflect your true thoughts rather than your immediate reactions. Frustration, like anger, can build quickly. It can create a sense of urgency, a need to resolve something immediately. But not all situations require immediate resolution. Sometimes, stepping back and allowing yourself time to process can lead to better outcomes. Silence in these moments acts as a buffer. It prevents you from reacting out of frustration and allows you to approach the situation with a clearer perspective. It helps you distinguish between what is truly important and what may be a temporary emotional response. Conflict is another area where silence plays a crucial role. In disagreements, there is often a tendency to respond quickly, to defend your position, and to assert your perspective. This can create a cycle where both parties are focused on being heard rather than understanding each other. Silence breaks this cycle. It creates space for listening, for reflection, and for a more balanced exchange. When you choose not to respond immediately, you give yourself the opportunity to fully understand the other person's perspective. You also reduce the likelihood of escalating the situation through reactive communication. Silence does not mean you avoid conflict. It means you engage with it more effectively. You approach it with awareness, with patience, and with a focus on resolution rather than reaction. This approach requires emotional discipline. Discipline is not about restricting yourself or suppressing your feelings. It is about developing the ability to manage your responses in a way that aligns with your values and intentions. Silence becomes a form of this discipline. It is the practice of holding back when you feel the urge to react. It is the decision to pause, to reflect, and to choose your words carefully. This discipline strengthens over time, becoming a natural part of how you navigate your emotions. As you develop this skill, you will begin to notice changes in how you handle situations. You will feel less reactive, more composed, and more in control of your responses. You will find that you are able to navigate difficult moments with greater ease, because you are not driven by immediate emotion. Responding with intention instead of reaction is the ultimate goal. It is the ability to align your communication with your values, your goals, and your understanding of the situation. It is about choosing your words and actions consciously, rather than being driven by impulse. This does not mean that you become detached or unemotional. It means that you become more aware of your emotions and how they influence your behavior. You learn to work with your emotions rather than being controlled by them. When you respond with intention, your communication becomes more effective. You are able to express your thoughts clearly, to address issues constructively, and to maintain your composure even in challenging situations. This not only improves your interactions with others, but also strengthens your sense of self. Emotional control through silence is not about avoiding expression. It is about refining it. It is about ensuring that when you do speak, your words are aligned with your true intentions, rather than being driven by momentary emotion. As you continue to practice this, you will find that silence becomes less of a challenge and more of a tool. It will feel natural to pause, to reflect, and to choose your response. You will develop a sense of confidence in your ability to handle situations with clarity and control. In a world that often encourages immediate reaction, choosing silence is a powerful act. It sets you apart. It allows you to navigate your emotions with strength and awareness. And it gives you the ability to respond in a way that is thoughtful, deliberate, and aligned with who you are. Silence is not the absence of response. It is the foundation of intentional response. And within that foundation lies your true power. Chapter 6: The Influence of Mystery and Presence. There is a certain kind of presence that does not demand attention, yet naturally attracts it. It is not loud, not overly expressive, and not driven by the need to impress. Instead, it is calm, grounded, and quietly powerful. You may have encountered people like this, individuals who do not say much, yet when they do, others listen. People who do not reveal everything, yet somehow seem more intriguing because of it. This is the influence of mystery and presence. In a world where oversharing has become the norm, where people feel the need to explain themselves constantly, to justify their choices, and to make their thoughts visible at all times, there is something refreshing about restraint. There is something compelling about someone who does not feel the need to reveal everything. People are naturally drawn to what they cannot fully see or understand. When everything is immediately available, when every thought is expressed and every detail is explained, there is little left to explore. But when there is space, when there is something left unsaid, curiosity begins to grow. Mystery creates engagement. It invites attention without forcing it. When you reveal less, you give others a reason to pay closer attention. They become more interested in what you might say next, more aware of your presence, and more engaged in the interaction. This does not mean being secretive or distant. It means being intentional. It means understanding that not everything needs to be shared, that not every thought needs to be spoken, and that your value is not determined by how much you reveal. The power of not over-explaining yourself is one of the most liberating aspects of this approach. Many people feel the need to justify their actions, to provide detailed explanations, and to ensure that others fully understand their perspective. This often comes from a desire to be accepted, to avoid misunderstanding, or to maintain control over how they are perceived. But over-explaining can weaken your presence. When you say too much, you dilute your message. You may unintentionally create doubt, as if you are trying too hard to be understood. It can also signal a lack of confidence, suggesting that you need to convince others of your position, rather than simply expressing it. When you communicate with clarity and restraint, your words carry more weight. You say what needs to be said, and then you allow it to stand. You do not feel the need to fill every gap, or to anticipate every possible question. This creates a sense of confidence, as you trust that your words are enough. Not over-explaining also allows others to engage more actively. When you leave space, people think more deeply about what you have said. They interpret, they reflect, and they become more involved in the interaction. This creates a more dynamic exchange, where communication is not one-sided but shared. Creating curiosity through restraint is not about manipulation. It is about understanding how attention works. When everything is given immediately, there is no reason to seek more. But when there is space, when there is a sense of unfolding, people become naturally curious. This curiosity enhances your influence. It makes your presence more engaging, without requiring constant effort. You are not chasing attention, you are allowing it to come to you. This shift changes the dynamic of your interactions, making them more balanced and more meaningful. Confidence plays a central role in this process. True confidence does not need to prove itself. It does not rely on constant validation or approval. It is steady, self-assured, and comfortable with silence. When you are confident, you do not feel the need to explain every decision or to justify every action. You trust your choices, and that trust is reflected in how you communicate. You speak with clarity, not with excess. You allow your actions to speak for themselves, rather than relying on words to reinforce them. This kind of confidence is often more impactful than overt displays of certainty. It is subtle, but it is felt. People can sense when someone is comfortable with themselves, when they are not trying to prove anything. This creates a sense of respect and trust, as others recognize the stability in your presence. Building a strong personal presence is not about dominating conversations or being the center of attention. It is about how you carry yourself, how you engage with others, and how you use silence to enhance your communication. Presence is created through awareness. It is the ability to be fully engaged in the moment, to listen deeply, and to respond with intention. When you are present, you are not distracted by the need to speak constantly. You are focused, attentive, and connected to what is happening around you. Silence supports this presence by removing unnecessary distractions. It allows you to observe, to understand, and to engage more fully. It creates a sense of calm, both within yourself and in your interactions with others. As you develop this presence, you will notice changes in how others respond to you. Conversations will feel more balanced. People will listen more closely. Your words will carry more weight, not because they are louder, but because they are more intentional. You will also notice changes within yourself. You will feel less pressure to speak, less need to prove, and more confidence in your ability to engage without overcompensating. You will become more comfortable with silence, seeing it not as something to avoid but as something to use. This shift does not happen overnight. It requires practice, awareness, and a willingness to let go of old habits. You may find yourself wanting to fill silence, to explain more than necessary, or to seek validation through words. These tendencies are natural, but they can be changed. Each time you choose restraint, you strengthen your presence. Each time you allow silence, you create space for deeper engagement. Each time you trust that your words are enough, you build confidence in your communication. The influence of mystery and presence is not about withholding or controlling. It is about understanding the power of what is not said. It is about recognizing that your presence is not defined by how much you speak, but by how you engage. In a world that values constant expression, choosing to say less is a powerful act. It allows you to stand out not through noise but through clarity. It gives you the ability to influence, not by force but by presence. And as you continue to develop this approach, you will begin to see that true influence is not about being heard all the time. It is about being remembered when you do speak. Chapter 7: Using Silence in Conversations and Conflict. Conversations are not only shaped by what is said, but by how and when it is said. Most people focus on their words, on crafting responses, on making sure they are heard. But very few pay attention to the space between words, the pauses, the timing, the moments of silence that carry just as much meaning as speech itself. When you begin to understand how to use silence intentionally, your communication transforms. You no longer feel the need to rush, to fill every gap, or to respond immediately. Instead, you learn to use silence as a tool, one that gives you control, clarity, and influence in both conversations and conflict. Strategic pauses are at the heart of this shift. A pause is not hesitation. It is not uncertainty. It is a deliberate moment of stillness that allows you to think, to observe, and to choose your next step carefully. In a world where quick responses are often expected, the ability to pause sets you apart. When you pause before speaking, you create space for reflection. You give yourself time to process what has been said, to understand the context, and to align your response with your intention. This prevents impulsive reactions and allows you to communicate more effectively. Strategic pauses also change how others perceive you. Instead of appearing reactive or rushed, you come across as thoughtful and composed. Your words feel more deliberate, and as a result, they carry more weight. People begin to listen more closely, because they sense that what you say is chosen carefully, not spoken out of habit. In conversations, silence has another powerful effect. It encourages others to speak more. When you resist the urge to fill every gap, you create space for the other person to expand on their thoughts. Many people are uncomfortable with silence, and when it appears, they feel compelled to fill it. This often leads them to share more information, to clarify their ideas, or to reveal thoughts they might not have expressed otherwise. By saying less, you gain more insight. You begin to understand not only what the other person is saying, but how they think, how they feel, and what matters to them. This deeper understanding gives you an advantage. It allows you to respond in a way that is more aligned, more relevant, and more effective. This principle is particularly powerful in situations where information is important. Instead of asking multiple questions or trying to guide the conversation forcefully, you allow silence to do the work. You listen, you observe, and you let the conversation unfold naturally. Silence in this context becomes a form of influence. It is not about controlling the conversation, but about creating the conditions for it to develop more fully. This influence becomes even more evident in negotiation. Many people approach negotiation with the belief that they need to speak more, to justify their position, to persuade through constant explanation. But often, this approach weakens their position. Silence, when used strategically, can be one of the most effective tools in negotiation. When you present your point and then remain silent, you create a moment of pressure. The other person is left to process what you have said without immediate distraction. This pause can lead them to respond more thoughtfully, to reconsider their position, or to reveal additional information. Silence also signals confidence. It shows that you are comfortable with your position, that you do not feel the need to over-explain or to convince through excess words. This confidence can influence how others perceive your stance, making it appear stronger and more grounded. In negotiation, the person who speaks less often learns more. They gather information, observe reactions, and respond with precision. This approach leads to better outcomes, because it is based on understanding rather than assumption. Conflict is another area where silence can be transformative. In arguments, there is often a tendency to respond immediately, to defend your position, or to counter the other person's words. This can create a cycle of escalation, where each response increases the intensity of the situation. Silence breaks this cycle. When you choose not to react immediately, you remove the fuel that often drives conflict. You create a pause that allows emotions to settle, both for yourself and for the other person. This pause can shift the entire dynamic, turning a reactive exchange into a more thoughtful interaction. Handling arguments without escalating requires discipline. It requires you to resist the urge to respond impulsively, to hold back when emotions are high, and to choose your words carefully. Silence supports this discipline by giving you the time and space to regain control. It also allows you to listen more effectively. In many conflicts, people are focused on being heard rather than understanding each other. By remaining silent and attentive, you create space for the other person to express themselves fully. This can reduce tension, as they feel acknowledged rather than challenged. Silence does not mean you avoid addressing the issue. It means you approach it with greater awareness. You choose when to speak, ensuring that your words contribute to resolution rather than escalation. There are moments when silence is more effective than words. These moments require awareness, because they are not always obvious. It may be a situation where words would only add to the tension, where any response would be interpreted negatively, or where the other person needs space to process their own thoughts. In these moments, silence communicates more than speech. It shows restraint, control, and understanding. It allows the situation to settle, creating the possibility for a more constructive interaction later. Knowing when to remain silent is a skill. It requires you to read the situation, to understand the dynamics at play, and to recognize when your words will add value and when they will not. This awareness develops over time, as you become more attuned to your interactions. As you begin to practice using silence in conversations and conflict, you will notice changes. You will feel less pressure to respond immediately, more confidence in your ability to pause, and greater control over your communication. You will also notice how others respond differently. Conversations may become more balanced, more thoughtful, and more meaningful. Conflicts may feel less intense, as the pace slows and the focus shifts from reaction to understanding. This does not mean that every situation will be resolved easily, or that silence will always be the best choice. It means that you have an additional tool, one that allows you to navigate interactions with greater awareness and effectiveness. Silence is not about withdrawing or avoiding. It is about engaging with intention. It is about understanding that communication is not only about what you say, but about how you use the space around your words. In a world that often values quick responses and constant expression, choosing to pause, to listen, and to allow silence is a powerful act. It gives you control, enhances your influence, and allows you to navigate conversations and conflict with clarity. And as you continue to develop this skill, you will begin to see that sometimes the most effective response is not immediate, not loud, and not filled with words. Sometimes it is silence. Chapter 8: Overcoming the Fear of Being Quiet. For many people, silence is not just uncomfortable, it is intimidating. It can feel like standing in a space without protection, without direction, without the safety of words to guide the moment. In conversations, silence can create a subtle pressure, a feeling that something is missing, that something must be said to restore balance. This fear of being quiet does not come from nowhere. It is built over time, shaped by habits, expectations, and experiences. You may have learned that speaking up is necessary to be noticed, that contributing constantly is a sign of confidence, or that silence might be interpreted as weakness or lack of understanding. These beliefs can become so ingrained that being quiet begins to feel unnatural. But what if the discomfort you feel in silence is not a limitation, but an invitation? An invitation to slow down, to observe, and to discover a different kind of strength. Breaking the habit of over-talking is the first step in this process. Over-talking often becomes automatic. You may not even realize how frequently you speak, or how quickly you respond. Words come out of habit, not always out of intention. You fill gaps, you add details, you respond immediately, often without giving yourself the time to fully process what is happening. This habit is not a flaw. It is a pattern, one that has been reinforced over time. And like any pattern, it can be changed. The key is awareness. Begin by noticing your own communication. Pay attention to how often you feel the urge to speak, especially in moments of silence. Notice when you interrupt, when you add unnecessary details, or when you respond quickly without thinking. This awareness is not about judgment. It is about understanding. Once you see the pattern, you create the opportunity to shift it. You do not need to stop speaking entirely. The goal is not silence for its own sake. The goal is intentional communication. It is about choosing when to speak, and when to remain quiet, rather than reacting automatically. At first, this may feel unfamiliar. You may feel the urge to fill the space, to return to your private way of interacting. But if you pause, even briefly, you begin to create a new habit. You give yourself a moment to decide whether speaking is necessary, or whether silence would serve you better. Becoming comfortable with silence is a gradual process. It does not happen instantly, and it does not require perfection. It begins with small moments. Allow yourself to sit in silence, without immediately reacting. In conversations, resist the urge to fill every pause. Notice how it feels, even if it is uncomfortable at first. Over time, that discomfort begins to shift. What once felt awkward starts to feel natural, even empowering. Silence, when embraced, becomes a space rather than a void. It is a moment where you can think, observe, and connect more deeply with what is happening around you. It is not something to escape, but something to experience. Letting go of the need to fill every gap is one of the most liberating aspects of this journey. Many people feel responsible for maintaining the flow of conversation. They believe that if there is a pause, they must step in to keep things moving. This creates pressure, turning communication into a performance rather than a connection. But conversations do not need to be constant to be meaningful. In fact, pauses can enhance them. They give both parties time to reflect, to process, and to engage more thoughtfully. When you let go of the need to fill every gap, you release yourself from this pressure. You allow conversations to breathe. You create space for others to contribute, for ideas to develop, and for the interaction to unfold naturally. This shift also changes how others perceive you. Instead of appearing rushed or reactive, you come across as calm and composed. Your silence becomes a sign of confidence, not hesitation. Building confidence in your presence is essential to overcoming the fear of being quiet. Many people rely on words to feel secure. They use speech as a way to assert themselves, to ensure they are noticed, and to maintain control over how they are perceived. But true confidence does not depend on constant expression. It is rooted in your sense of self, in your ability to be present without needing to prove anything. When you are confident in your presence, you do not feel the need to speak constantly. You trust that your value is not determined by how much you say, but by how you engage. You are comfortable being seen without needing to fill the space with words. This confidence grows as you practice. Each time you choose silence over unnecessary speech, you reinforce your ability to hold space. Each time you allow a pause without rushing to fill it, you strengthen your presence. Over time, this becomes natural. You begin to feel at ease in silence, recognizing it as part of communication rather than an interruption of it. Reframing silence as strength is the final step in this transformation. For many, silence has been associated with weakness, with uncertainty, or with lack of confidence. Changing this perception requires a shift in how you see it. Silence is not the absence of power. It is a form of it. It is the ability to hold back when you feel the urge to speak. It is the discipline to pause, to observe, and to respond with intention. It is the confidence to be present without needing to prove yourself through constant words. When you begin to see silence in this way, your relationship with it changes. It is no longer something to avoid, but something to use. It becomes a tool that enhances your communication, strengthens your presence, and deepens your understanding. You start to notice how silence affects your interactions. How it creates space, how it draws attention, how it allows for more meaningful engagement. You see how your words, when used sparingly, carry more weight. You experience the difference between speaking out of habit and speaking with purpose. This transformation does not require you to become someone different. It requires you to become more aware, more intentional, and more confident in who you already are. There will still be moments when silence feels uncomfortable. This is natural. Growth often involves stepping into unfamiliar territory. But with each step, that discomfort becomes less intense. It gives way to a sense of control, of clarity, and of quiet confidence. As you continue this journey, remember that silence is not about withdrawing or hiding. It is about engaging more effectively. It is about understanding that your presence is powerful, even without constant words. You do not need to speak to be heard. You do not need to fill every space to be valued. You do not need to prove your worth through constant expression. Your presence is enough. And when you begin to embrace silence as strength, you unlock a level of confidence and influence that goes far beyond words. Chapter 9: Silence in Personal Growth and Self-Awareness. In a world that rarely slows down, silence has become one of the most overlooked paths to growth. You are constantly surrounded by input, conversations, notifications, opinions, expectations, all competing for your attention. There is always something to respond to, something to engage with, something pulling you outward. And in the middle of all this noise, it becomes easy to lose touch with something essential: yourself. Personal growth does not happen in constant distraction. It happens in moments of reflection, in spaces where you are able to think, to feel, and to understand without interruption. It happens in silence. Silence is where self-awareness begins. When everything around you quiets down, your inner world becomes more visible. Thoughts that were once buried beneath distraction begin to surface. Emotions that were pushed aside begin to make themselves known. This can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable at first, because you are no longer able to avoid what is within you. But within that discomfort lies opportunity. The role of silence in self-reflection is profound. Reflection requires space. It requires you to step back from constant activity and to look inward with honesty. It asks you to consider your thoughts, your actions, and your patterns without distraction. When you are constantly engaged with the outside world, reflection becomes shallow. You may think about your experiences briefly, but you do not fully process them. You move quickly from one moment to the next, carrying unresolved thoughts and emotions with you. Silence slows this process down. It gives you the time to sit with your experiences, to understand them and to learn from them. It allows you to ask deeper questions. Why did I react that way? What am I truly feeling? What do I want to change? What matters to me? These questions do not always have immediate answers, but in silence you create the conditions for those answers to emerge. Creating space to think clearly is one of the most valuable outcomes of silence. When your mind is constantly filled with input, it becomes cluttered. Thoughts overlap, distractions increase, and clarity becomes difficult to find. You may feel overwhelmed, not because there is too much happening, but because there is no space to process it. Silence clears this clutter. It allows your thoughts to settle, to organize, and to become more coherent. It gives you the ability to focus on one idea at a time, to explore it fully, and to understand it more deeply. This clarity enhances your decision-making, your problem-solving, and your overall sense of direction. When you create space for clear thinking, you begin to approach your life differently. You are no longer reacting to everything immediately. You are considering your options, weighing your choices, and making decisions that are aligned with your values. This shift brings a sense of control, not over external circumstances but over how you engage with them. Disconnecting from noise is an essential part of this process. Noise is not only external. It is also internal, created by constant thinking, overanalyzing, and reacting. To reconnect with yourself, you need to step away from both. This does not mean isolating yourself completely or avoiding interaction. It means creating intentional moments where you are not consuming, not responding, and not distracted. It means allowing yourself to be present without external input. In these moments, you begin to hear yourself more clearly. Your thoughts become more authentic, less influenced by outside opinions. Your emotions become more accessible, less buried beneath distraction. You begin to reconnect with your own voice. This reconnection is powerful. It allows you to understand who you are beyond external expectations. It helps you identify what you truly want, what you value, and what aligns with your sense of purpose. Developing inner clarity and wisdom comes from this process of reflection and reconnection. Wisdom is not something that is given to you. It is something that develops over time, through experience, reflection, and understanding. Silence is what allows you to transform experience into wisdom. Without reflection, experiences remain isolated. They happen and then they pass. But when you take the time to reflect, to understand what those experiences mean, you begin to extract lessons from them. You begin to see patterns, to recognize growth, and to develop a deeper understanding of yourself and your life. This understanding becomes your inner clarity. It guides your decisions, your actions, and your interactions. It helps you navigate challenges with greater awareness and confidence. Wisdom is not about having all the answers. It is about knowing how to approach questions. It is about understanding that not everything needs immediate resolution, and that growth often comes from the process of exploration. Silence supports this exploration by creating the space for it to happen. It allows you to think without interruption, to feel without distraction, and to understand without pressure. Silence is also a powerful tool for personal transformation. Transformation requires change, and change requires awareness. You cannot change what you do not understand. Silence helps you understand. When you spend time in silence, you begin to see your habits more clearly. You notice your patterns of thought, your emotional responses, and your behaviors. You become aware of what serves you and what does not. This awareness is the foundation of change. Once you see your patterns, you have the ability to shift them. You can choose to respond differently, to think differently, to act differently. This choice is what creates transformation. Silence gives you the space to make these choices consciously. It removes the noise that often drives automatic behavior, allowing you to act with intention rather than habit. As you continue to embrace silence in your personal growth, you will begin to notice changes. You will feel more connected to yourself, more aware of your thoughts and emotions, and more confident in your decisions. You will find that you are less reactive, more reflective, and more aligned with your values. This does not mean that your life becomes free of challenges or uncertainty. It means that you are better equipped to navigate them. You approach situations with clarity, with understanding, and with a sense of inner stability. Silence becomes a space where you return to yourself. It is where you recalibrate, where you process, and where you grow. It is not something you escape into, but something you engage with intentionally. In a world that constantly pulls your attention outward, choosing silence is a powerful act. It is a decision to prioritize your inner world, to invest in your growth, and to develop a deeper understanding of yourself. You do not need to retreat from the world to benefit from silence. You simply need to create moments within your life where you allow it. Moments where you pause, where you reflect, and where you reconnect. These moments may be small, but their impact is significant. They shape how you think, how you feel, and how you move through the world. Silence is not empty. It is full of potential. It is where clarity is found, where wisdom is developed, and where transformation begins. And when you learn to use it intentionally, it becomes one of the most powerful tools for personal growth and self-awareness you will ever have. Chapter 10: Mastering the Balance Between Silence and Speech. Silence is powerful, but it is not meant to replace speech. It is meant to refine it. The true mastery of communication does not come from speaking less alone, but from knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. It is found in the balance between expression and restraint, between presence and participation, between listening and contributing. This balance is what transforms silence from a passive habit into an active skill. There will be moments when silence serves you, when it allows you to observe, to understand, and to maintain control. And there will be moments when your voice is necessary, when your thoughts need to be expressed, when your presence must be felt through your words. The challenge is not choosing one over the other, but learning how to move between them with awareness. Knowing when to speak and when to stay silent begins with intention. It requires you to ask yourself a simple but powerful question: does what I am about to say add value? This question shifts your focus. Instead of speaking out of habit, out of discomfort with silence, or out of the need to be heard, you begin to speak with purpose. You consider the impact of your words before they are spoken. You evaluate whether they clarify, contribute, or elevate the conversation. When your words are intentional, they become more effective. They are not lost in a sea of unnecessary communication. They stand out, carrying meaning and direction. Silence supports this process by giving you the space to think before you speak. It allows you to step back, to process, and to choose your words carefully. Without this pause, communication often becomes reactive. You speak as thoughts arise, without fully considering their relevance or impact. But with silence, you create a filter. You refine your thoughts, ensuring that what you say aligns with your intention. Using words with intention and impact means recognizing that not all communication is equal. Some words clarify while others confuse. Some build connection while others create distance. Some inspire while others diminish. When you speak with intention, you become more aware of this distinction. You choose your words carefully, not out of hesitation but out of purpose. You understand that your words have weight, and you use them in a way that reflects that understanding. This does not mean overthinking every sentence or becoming overly cautious. It means being mindful. It means speaking in a way that is aligned with your values, your goals, and the context of the situation. At the same time, it is important to avoid the extremes of silence. Silence, when used intentionally, is powerful. But when it becomes avoidance, it can limit your growth and your ability to connect. There is a difference between choosing silence and hiding behind it. Avoidance occurs when you remain silent out of fear, when you withhold your voice because you are uncertain, uncomfortable, or afraid of judgment. In these moments, silence is not empowering. It is restrictive. It prevents you from expressing your thoughts, from asserting your needs, and from engaging fully in your interactions. Mastering the balance means recognizing this difference. It means understanding that your voice is valuable, and that there are moments when it needs to be heard. It means having the confidence to speak when it matters, even if it feels uncomfortable. This balance requires self-awareness. You need to understand your tendencies. Do you speak too quickly, filling space without intention? Or do you hold back, avoiding expression even when it is necessary? By identifying these patterns, you can begin to adjust. If you tend to over-talk, you can practice restraint, allowing silence to create space. If you tend to withdraw, you can practice speaking, allowing your voice to be heard. Communicating with clarity and purpose is the result of this balance. It is not about saying more or less, but about saying what matters. It is about ensuring that your communication is aligned with your intention, your understanding, and your presence. Clarity comes from thinking before speaking, from organizing your thoughts, and from expressing them in a way that is direct and meaningful. It avoids unnecessary complexity, focusing on what is essential. Purpose comes from understanding why you are speaking. Are you informing, connecting, guiding, or responding? When you know your purpose, your words become more focused, more impactful, and more effective. Together, clarity and purpose create communication that resonates. It is not just heard but understood. It is not just expressed but felt. As you develop this balance, you will begin to notice changes in how you interact with others. Conversations will feel more intentional. You will feel less pressure to speak constantly, and more confidence in your ability to contribute meaningfully. You will also notice changes in how others respond to you. Your words will carry more weight. Your silence will be respected. Your presence will feel stronger, not because you are louder but because you are more aligned. Becoming both thoughtful and influential is not about mastering a technique. It is about developing a mindset. It is about approaching communication with awareness, with intention, and with respect for both silence and speech. Thoughtfulness comes from reflection. It is the ability to consider your words, to understand their impact, and to choose them carefully. It is supported by silence, which gives you the space to think and to observe. Influence comes from clarity and presence. It is the ability to communicate in a way that resonates with others, that guides conversations, and that creates meaningful connections. It is enhanced by intention, which ensures that your words are aligned with your purpose. When you combine these qualities, your communication becomes powerful. You are not speaking to fill space but to create impact. You are not silent out of fear, but out of awareness. You move between silence and speech with confidence, using each when it is most effective. This balance is not something you achieve once and maintain perfectly. It is something you practice. Each conversation, each interaction, each moment presents an opportunity to refine your approach. There will be times when you speak more than necessary, and times when you remain silent when you could have contributed. This is part of the learning process. What matters is that you continue to develop your awareness, to reflect on your communication, and to adjust accordingly. Over time, this practice becomes natural. You no longer need to think consciously about when to speak or when to remain silent. You feel it. You understand the flow of conversation, the needs of the moment, and the impact of your presence. You become someone who communicates with ease, with confidence, and with intention. In a world that often values constant expression, mastering the balance between silence and speech sets you apart. It allows you to engage more deeply, to connect more meaningfully, and to influence more effectively. It shows that you do not need to choose between being quiet and being heard. You can be both. And in that balance you find your true voice, not defined by how much you say, but by how powerfully you say it. Conclusion: the strength in saying less. There is a quiet transformation that happens when you begin to understand the true power of silence. It is not loud or dramatic. It does not demand attention or announce itself. Instead, it unfolds gradually, changing the way you think, the way you communicate, and the way you carry yourself in the world. At first, silence may have felt uncomfortable. It may have seemed like something to avoid, something that created awkwardness or uncertainty. But now, you begin to see it differently. You begin to understand that silence is not emptiness, it is strength. It is not absence, it is presence. It is not weakness, it is control. Throughout this journey, one truth has become clear: silence is a form of influence and power. Not because it replaces words, but because it gives them meaning. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you pause, people pay attention. When you choose your moments carefully, your voice becomes more impactful. You are no longer speaking to fill space, but to create value. You are no longer reacting automatically, but responding with intention. This shift changes everything. You begin to move through conversations with awareness rather than urgency. You listen more deeply, understand more clearly, and respond more thoughtfully. You create space for others to express themselves, and in doing so you gain insight that constant talking would have prevented. Silence becomes your advantage, not because it makes you invisible, but because it makes you intentional. One of the most powerful changes you will experience is letting go of the need to always be heard. For many, this need is deeply rooted. It is tied to validation, to the desire to be acknowledged, to the belief that speaking more means being valued more. But true value is not measured by how often you speak. It is measured by how meaningful your contributions are. When you release the need to always be heard, you free yourself from pressure. You no longer feel the urgency to respond to everything, to explain yourself constantly, or to assert your presence in every moment. You trust that your voice will be heard when it matters. This trust is a form of confidence. It is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. It allows you to engage with others without needing to prove yourself. It allows you to step back when necessary and step forward when it is meaningful. You begin to understand that influence is not about dominating conversations, but about shaping them. It is not about volume, but about clarity. It is not about frequency, but about impact. Embracing presence over noise is at the heart of this transformation. Noise is constant. It fills every space, demands attention, and often lacks direction. Presence, on the other hand, is intentional. It is focused, grounded, and deeply connected to the moment. When you choose presence, you are no longer distracted by the need to speak. You are fully engaged, fully aware, and fully connected to what is happening around you. Your attention becomes sharper, your understanding deeper, and your communication more effective. People can feel this presence. It creates a different kind of energy in your interactions. It makes you someone who is not only heard but respected. Someone who does not need to compete for attention, because your presence alone is enough. This is where true influence lies. It is not in saying more, but in saying what matters. It is not in filling every gap, but in knowing when to create space. It is not in reacting quickly, but in responding thoughtfully. As you move forward, this is your invitation to practice intentional silence. Not as a rule, but as a choice. In your conversations, allow yourself to pause before responding. Notice the difference it makes. Observe how others react, how the dynamic shifts, how your words carry more weight when they are not constant. In your daily life, create moments of silence for yourself. Step away from the noise, even briefly, and allow yourself to think, to reflect, and to reconnect with your inner voice. Notice how this clarity influences your decisions, your mindset, and your sense of direction. Practice listening more than speaking. Not because you have nothing to say, but because understanding is the foundation of meaningful communication. Notice how much you learn, how much you gain, and how much stronger your responses become. These practices may feel small, but their impact is profound. Over time, they reshape how you communicate, how you connect, and how you influence. There will still be moments when you feel the urge to speak more, to fill silence, or to assert yourself quickly. This is natural. Habits take time to change. What matters is not perfection but awareness. Each time you choose silence with intention, you strengthen your ability to use it effectively. Each time you pause, you create space for clarity. Each time you speak with purpose, you reinforce the value of your voice. And gradually, something shifts. You begin to feel more in control, not of others but of yourself. You become more confident, not because you are louder but because you are more aligned. You become more influential, not because you speak more, but because you speak with intention. In the end, the strength in saying less is not about limiting yourself. It is about refining yourself. It is about understanding that your voice is powerful, and that its power is not in its frequency but in its impact. It is about recognizing that silence is not something to fear, but something to master. And it is about embracing the truth that the most powerful voices are often the quietest, not because they are silent, but because when they speak they are truly heard. Thank you for reading this book. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to leave us a review. TM Light. Disclaimer. This book was created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. While every effort was made to ensure the accuracy and relevance of the content, readers should note that this cannot be considered professional advice. Readers are encouraged to apply their own judgment and consult experts where needed.